He threw a glass of water in my face for asking about the light bill. Cold tap water, right across my cheeks, into my collar and down the front of the shirt my wife Marion bought me the winter before she died. The glass hit the table with a hard little kiss, and the only other sound in Evan's Cleveland kitchen was the oven timer, one lonely ding, like it was embarrassed for us. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. We were having cheap roast and boxed potatoes because money's tight, or so. I'd been told, tight enough that I'd covered 5. Emergencies since July were $200, then $600, then $950, then $1,200 and $1,200 again. I asked, softly, because I'm not a man who likes to raise his voice, where last month's $400 light bill went, considering my pension is what pays the joint bill pay account. Evan leaned back, 32 and full of himself, and said I should be grateful he lets me use his heat in the upstairs unit. You want more? Here, he said, and the water came across like it had been waiting. Bree froze. She had a dish towel in her hands and didn't move. Her eyes begged both of us to be better men than we were being. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say a word. I stood, dripping onto linoleum that still had a faded checkerboard from the 1990s. And I walked out into the lake wind like a man who'd been christened with tap instead of grace. On the porch, my phone buzzed. Bree's text. He's stressed. Just drop it. I watched the typing dots appear and disappear, like they were practicing apologies they couldn't deliver. I put the phone away and climbed the stairs to my little place, 2 rooms and a view of a grey alley. I hung my damp shirt on the back of a chair and set out a manila folder on the table. My pension stubs, bank printouts, a photo of Marion in a black frame, the paper curling at the corners. She's laughing at something I said outside a church in '98. I placed the frame above the papers like a paperweight and said, I will not be small in my own old age. On the top printout, the account number ended in 4862, our household account since 2018. I'm listed as owner. Ivan is an authorized user. That sentence, owner versus user, clicked in my head like a ratchet at the plant. Years running machines taught me the difference between what you hold and what you borrow. A man who borrows a wrench doesn't own the toolbox. I peeled off my glasses, dried them with the hem of my t-shirt, and noticed a crumpled bill in the folder. $2,800 for furniture, dated November 14th, a sectional I'd never sat on. The paper smelled like cologne and delivery warehouse dust. I underlined the date with a pencil and wrote a neat little 1 in the corner. Evidence has numbers. Evidence breathes better when you give it order. My neighbor Marlon had mentioned his ring cam picked up voices on our porch the night before. I texted him and he sent a file. I didn't open it yet. I didn't need to. I knew what it would say. He'll hand it over. He always does. Not anymore. I powered up my old Samsung and, in the dead quiet of that upstairs unit, recorded one steady sentence to hold myself accountable. I'm going to let paper do the talking. Then I added the light bill to the folder, closed the flap, and set the stack dead center on the table like a promise. The morning after the splash, the pipes in the upstairs unit clanked like old bones. Cleveland winters make everything speak. Radiators hiss, windows creak, even the cheap blinds seem to breathe. I stood at the sink with a legal pad and wrote a single word at the top in block letters. Total. Then I listed each emergency since July, saying the numbers out loud because speaking them made them real. 1,200, 600, 950, 1,200, 1,200 again. 5 favors dressed as fires. 5 buckets into a well that wasn't mine. I underlined the last figure and felt something in my chest sag, like a beam settling. I'm not a crier. 41 years on a shop floor taught me to save tears for funerals and splinters you can't reach. But shame doesn't ask permission. It crept up behind me like cold air and sat on my shoulders while the kettle took forever to boil. I tried to busy my hands, wiped the counter twice, leveled the stack of mail, even aligned the edges of Marion's photo frame with the table. None of it steadied me. The room tipped a little, and I braced the edge with my palm. The folder lay open where I'd left it. On top sat the 2,800 furniture bill from November 14, creased, cologne-scented, with a delivery stamp that made me feel like a guest in a life I funded. Under it, the bank printout for the joint account ending in 4862. There it was in black type. Owner, my name. Authorized user, Evan. That tiny difference, owner versus user, clicked again like a ratchet bite. I ran a pencil line under my name and whispered, mine. Not the way a boy clutches a toy, but the way a man names his last fence post. Marlon texted right at 8. He'd pulled the ring cam audio off his porch from Sunday night. Got it. You sure? He wrote. I tapped back, yes. The file came through. Tinny voices, boots on wood, the winter quiet that eats sound until words feel bigger than mouths. Evan's voice low but clear. He'll hand it over. He always does. The shame changed flavors. It stopped tasting like failure and started tasting like opportunity. I saved the clip to a USB and labeled it with blue tape, the way we used to mark tool drawers. Porch. No V22. I set it beside the pension stubs, like a bookend. By 9:30 I had my coat on. The spare keys, my keys, hung on the red hook by Evan's garage, and the color felt like a warning light in a factory. Someone wanted me to ignore what I could plainly see. I kept walking. Down Lorraine Avenue the wind came sideways. Great Lakes Credit Union glowed with that tired fluorescent honesty all banks have before lunch. And there was Mr. Polk, 20 years older, but still with the good tie and the patient eyes. He'd cashed my first overtime check in '97 when we all thought the plant would never slow. Morning, Mr. Ash, he said. No one calls me Mr. Anything anymore. It sat right. I explained what I needed carefully, like I was threading a needle with heavy gloves. A printed letter stating the ownership of the 4862 account. A note on file that I was reviewing all authorized users. And because I'd learned the hard way not to rely on should, a stack of paper statements for the last 6 months. He looked at the screen, then at me. You're listed as the owner, yes, he said. I can print an account summary today. The formal letter with letterhead and signature will date when compliance stamps it. Usually the first business days of the month. He checked the calendar on his desk. December 2nd. Print what you can, I said. He did. Warm paper, simple lines that a person could understand without a lawyer. Owner, authorized user. He slid them across. Keep documenting, Mr. Ash, he added, not nosy, just human. Paper is a better witness than memory. Back upstairs, I put the temporary print behind the furniture bill, then clipped both together with a black binder clip. The kettle finally whistled. Tea helps men who can't drink before noon. I sat with the mug between my hands and listened to the house. In the silence, I could still hear last night's single oven ding, like a metronome marking the beat between what I used to allow and what I was willing to allow now. My phone blinked with a text from Bree. Can we talk later? He's calmed down. She added a heart and then deleted it, one of those texting stutters you can feel even after the edit. We can, I wrote back, but I need to sort the account first. She didn't reply. The 3 dots came and went like gulls. I took stock the way you do, before you pack a toolbox. What do I have? What do I need? What's broken? Have pension stubs. 2,187 on the first like clockwork. Bank printouts. The 2,800 bill. The ring audio, my keys. My name on the account. Need a formal bank authority letter dated December 2nd. A simple repayment agreement drafted by a person who uses words for a living. Certified mail receipts to prove I offered decency before I exercised authority. Broken, not the law, not the numbers, just the habit of giving unmeasured. I folded a sheet of lined paper and wrote a list with square checkboxes like we used to do in maintenance. Call elder law attorney. Order statements, formal letter, Deck 2 draft repayment terms. Keep tone calm. Under that, I wrote one more line. Plan dessert for Christmas. It made no sense, and perfect sense at the same time. A man needs a door in his mind that isn't locked by anger. At noon, I opened Marion's recipe box. Her handwriting leaned forward, always rushing a little toward whoever needed feeding. I found the card for her Christmas chess bars and tucked it in the folder. Not because I intended to bake, Because I needed a clean picture of what family looks like when everyone remembers their job. My job now was not to set the table. It was to set the terms. I slid the USB into a small envelope and wrote, "Marlon backup" across the front. I'd hand it to him later. 2 witnesses beat 1. Then I closed the manila folder, pressed the flap flat, and ran my palm along it until the paper warmed. The weight of it steadied the tilt of the room. Collapse was over. The paperwork could stand on its own 2 feet, even if I had to lean for a while. Paper cuts beat punches. That's what I told myself on December 1st, walking through the thin snow on Lorraine Avenue. The air smelled like salt and bus exhaust, the kind of morning that makes you wish coffee came with courage. I was heading to meet an elder law attorney named Tasha Ruiz, recommended by a church friend who said she doesn't talk over you. She listens first. Her office sat above a nail salon and a tax prep place, the kind of building where ordinary people fix extraordinary mistakes. A flickering plastic wreath hung over the door, and the waiting room smelled faintly of peppermint and printer ink. She shook my hand, firm but warm. "You're the one with the joint account situation?" she asked. "More like the joint account war," I said. I laid everything out on her desk, the authority printout, the transfer list, and the $2,800 furniture bill. My handwriting looked small next to her legal pad. She read in silence, lips pressed tight, then said, "You're listed as the owner. Your son's an authorized user. You can remove him whenever you wish, and you can move your funds. The law's on your side, as long as you do it clean." I nodded. "Clean's all I want." She took out a fresh sheet. "We'll prepare a simple repayment agreement. He acknowledges $5,150 in temporary assistance. 60 days to repay, or you have the right to set off that amount against any account you share. Certified mail. No surprises, no ambushes." Her pen scratched steadily, a small rhythm in the quiet. When she pushed the draft toward me, I ran my thumb across the paper. 60 days. I didn't need the money back. I needed the respect behind it. "Send it soon," she said. "But keep your tone calm. Family law loves paper but hates anger." That line stuck with me. At the post office on December 5th, the clerk handed me 2 prepaid envelopes and slid the register receipt toward me. I folded it once, tucked it into my wallet, and added a check mark beside "mail certified" in my notebook. Evidence doesn't just live in courts, it lives in wallets too. That night, my phone buzzed with a photo from Bree, a massive 75-inch television, still wrapped in delivery plastic. "Early Christmas surprise for Evan," the message said, followed by a smiley face that looked more like guilt than joy. The reflection in the photo showed a bright price tag, $1,219. I saved the image. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. Afterward, I sat by the window with my tea and looked out at the porch light bouncing off the snow. The red hook with my spare keys glowed faintly under the bulb. It reminded me how easily people hang ownership on nails and call it generosity. On December 10th, I placed an online order for a new deadbolt, brass with a smooth key turn. Small purchases make big statements when timed right. The shipping confirmation landed in my inbox, and I saved it under a new folder I named House. By then, my plan wasn't about money anymore. It was about making the paper trail stronger than any argument. Every time Evan raised his voice, I wanted to have a document that whispered louder. Before bed, I checked the tracking number for the certified letters. It showed "in transit." The timer was set. I looked around my little apartment. The walls were bare, except for Marion's photo, and the manila folder growing thicker by the day. I pressed my palm on the folder's spine, like you might pat a dog that's guarding the house. In the morning, I walked the folder to Marlon's place. His porch smelled of sawdust and coffee. I handed him a sealed USB. "Backup," I said. "If anything happens, this tells the story." He didn't pry, just nodded, pocketed it, and said, "Smart move, old man." That evening, I opened my notebook and drew a small square beside "letters delivered." I left it unchecked. Tomorrow, I'd see the tracking update. For now, I had proof stacked like bricks, receipts, statements, a lawyer's draft, and my wife's recipe card tucked in front like a blessing. The night was quiet except for a faint ticking. Oven timer downstairs. Same sound as the night Evan drenched me in front of his dinner plate. I stared at the ceiling, listening to that metronome of fate, and smiled to myself. Every sound was now a countdown. Owner means owner. That's what I told myself walking into Great Lakes Credit Union on December 8th. The same wind that had cut through me 2 weeks ago now felt like a push at my back. Mr. Polk was behind the counter, glasses low on his nose, the way he'd looked every time I cashed a check since '97. He smiled when he saw me. "Morning, Mr. Ash. You back about that account?" "Yes," I said, laying my worn leather folder on the desk. "I need to remove an authorized user from my household account ending in 4862, open a new account in my name only, and set up my pension to deposit there starting January 1st. He nodded without asking questions. "You're the owner, so that's no problem. We'll sign a new authorization today." It took about 10 minutes. Just signatures, initials, and the soft tearing of carbon copies. Polk stamped the papers with a dull blue seal and slid them to me. "Keep these for your records." I tucked them carefully into my folder. The paper felt warmer than it should have. I'd just taken back my dignity with ink. Next, I asked for print statements for the last 6 months. He raised a brow. "That's quite a few pages." "I like the sound of a printer working," I said. He chuckled, then loaded a ream of paper and let it hum. The sound reminded me of the old press line at the plant. Steady, purposeful. Proof rolling out in black and white. When I left, snow had started again. I walked home slower this time, feeling taller than the cold. Back upstairs, I spread the statements across the table like blueprints of betrayal. There were the 5 emergency transfers, 200, 600, 950, 1200 and 1200, each neatly labeled family need. Family, yes. Need no, I stacked them chronologically, clipped them, and wrote verified Deck 8 Polk in pencil on the corner. The next morning, I received an email confirming my new pension deposit authorization had been accepted. My January payment, $2,187, would go to the solo account. I printed that too and added it to the folder. Later that week, I installed the new brass deadbolt that arrived on December 10th. It clicked into place smoother than butter. The sound echoed through my small hallway like punctuation. I took a photo of the installed lock, timestamped Deck 10, and sent it to my email, another piece of quiet evidence. On December 11th, I logged into the Smart Lock app and exported the activity log, showing every time my upstairs door had been unlocked since November. There were a few entries that didn't line up with when I'd been home. I printed that too, that night, Bree called. Her voice sounded like a frayed rope about to give. "He's under pressure, Mr. Ash. Work's been slow. The bills, the stress. He's not himself. Please don't escalate." "I'm not," I said softly. "That's why I mailed him an agreement, not a threat." She was quiet for a beat. "He got it." "But he hasn't opened it." "Then it's still his choice," I said. After the call, I opened my notebook and began writing a running log. Dates, times, summaries, each in a straight line like a mechanic's maintenance record. Deck 8, account changes complete. Deck 10, new lock installed. Deck 11, log exported. The notebook cost me 42 lows, spiral-bound with blue cover. Worth every penny. When I reached the last line of the page, I wrote something my foreman used to say when a machine started shaking, methodical beats, hysterical. The next morning, I brewed coffee, sat by the window, and waited for the first text that would tell me Evan noticed his access had vanished. But nothing came. Just silence and a weather alert about more snow. I decided not to prod the bear. Silence, too, is a sign. It means they're looking for a new angle. So I waited quietly, with my papers, my ledger, and my patience. Revenge isn't loud. It's organized, and on that cold Cleveland morning I realized my life wasn't falling apart. It was being filed. The first sign of panic came at 11:22 a.m. on December 15th. My phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Polk. "Just letting you know, a $9 to $80 withdrawal attempt was flagged and blocked on the closed household account. He didn't need to tell me who made the attempt." I sat at my table, tea half cold, and whispered, "The tap ran dry." I called him back. "Everything in order?" "Perfectly in order," he said, calm as ever. "The removal you signed on the 8th is locked in. He's got no access now. You're fully protected." "Appreciate you, Polk," I said. I owe you coffee one of these days. Make it spring, he laughed. I'm not coming out in this snow. I noted the call in my blue $42 ledger, deck 15, 11:22 a.m. Withdrawal attempt blocked, 1980. Confirmed owner protection holds. Then I waited. At 7 that evening, footsteps thundered up the stairwell. A sharp knock shook the door. Evan's voice, angry, loud, close. Dad, open up. I didn't. I waited for him to use his key. Nothing. That meant he'd already discovered the deadbolt change. The victory felt small but solid. He knocked again, harder. I know you messed with the account. I can't buy groceries. Bree's furious. I opened the door just a crack. Then you should have thought about groceries before a 75-inch television. His eyes flicked wide. He hadn't expected me to know. You had no right, he hissed. I had every right, I said. Steady. Owner means owner. The paperwork says so. You think this is funny? You're going to freeze up here without heat. Funny thing, I said, picking up a paper from the table and holding it under the hallway light. Gas receipt dated November 3rd. Paid by me. His jaw flexed. Fine, he spat. Freeze in January. He turned and stomped down the stairs, muttering something to Bree. When the door closed below, I heard Bree's voice, small, tired. Evan, please. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Bree again, please come for Christmas Eve dinner. He'll apologize. I promise. I stared at the text, reading it 3 times. The words looked hopeful, but her promise sounded more like a plea. I typed back, I'll bring dessert. What I didn't say was that dessert would come in a white box with a red string, but not the kind that ends sweet. That night, I opened my certified mail tracking. Both letters showed delivered as of December 18th. Evan had signed for neither. I took my pen and wrote one single line in my ledger. Silence is a choice. Over the next few days, Cleveland stayed frozen under grey skies. I filled my time with small tasks, things that made my hands feel useful again. I shoveled the small walkway in front of the duplex, changed a flickering light bulb in the hallway, and organized my bills by month in a metal clip. Routine is a man's best friend when waiting for confrontation. On December 19th, I saw Bree in the driveway, scraping ice off her windshield. She looked up and waved with the kind of weary kindness only someone caught between loyalty and fear can manage. Everything okay? I called down. She hesitated. He's just embarrassed, Mr. Ash. You know how pride works. I do, I said. I built machines that ran on it for 40 years. She gave a small, sad smile. He'll come around. I hope so, I said, though we both knew hope was as thin as that ice on her window. That night, I set up my dining table for what was coming. Folder in the center, papers stacked by date. The ring cam transcript, the authority letter, the furniture bill, the repayment agreement, and my own handwritten summary of every transaction. It wasn't anger on the table, it was order. When I finished, I took a photo of the spread with my phone. If anyone ever asked why I did what I did, I could point to that image and say, because it was all right there. I sat back and listened to the faint hum of the refrigerator. That old appliance was the only thing in the duplex that didn't take sides. By December 20th, Bree texted again, confirming dinner for Christmas Eve. Come around 6, she wrote. He'll say sorry, I replied. I'll be there. I'll bring something special. That night I looked through Marion's recipe box again and found her handwriting one more time. I placed the recipe for chess bars on top of the folder like a decoy, one last reminder of what decency used to look like. Outside, snow started again, the kind that falls slow and heavy, muting everything but your own thoughts. I leaned back, looked at the ceiling and whispered to myself, you started this with water. Let's see how you handle paper. The timer was set. The oven would ding soon enough, December 24th. Christmas Eve, the kind of cold that makes the breath scrape your throat. Cleveland was wrapped in lake-effect snow, the streets slick and silent except for the hum of a few last-minute shoppers. I stood outside Evan's duplex, holding a white bakery box tied in red string. It looked festive, harmless, the kind of box that usually holds pie or cookies. Mine didn't. Inside that box were printouts, The authority letter, repayment agreement, ring cam transcript, and every statement and receipt I'd gathered. My dessert was paper. Bree opened the door before I could knock. She looked tired but hopeful. "I'm glad you came," she said, taking my coat. The smell of cinnamon candles hit me, too sweet to be real. The table was already set, cheap wine, plastic holly, the new 75-inch TV glowing silent blue from the corner like a judge waiting for a verdict. Evan sat at the head of the table, tie half loosened, eyes already glassy from beer. "Didn't think you'd show," he said. "You invited me," I said. "And I keep appointments." Dinner started polite. Bree passed the roast. His sister called in on FaceTime, and for a few minutes we pretended this was a family. But pretense never lasts. Evan kept cutting glances at me, daring me to bring up the account. I didn't. I waited for the right sound, the oven timer. When it dinged, I reached down, placed the white box on the table, and slid it toward Bree. "What's this?" She asked. "Dessert," I said, and sat back. Evan smirked. "What, store-bought this year?" "Open it," I said quietly. The red string came loose, the lid lifted, and silence filled the room thicker than gravy. Bree's eyes flicked over the papers inside. The stamped letters, the highlighted figures, the printed transcript from Marlon's porch camera. Evan barked a short laugh. "You really brought paperwork to Christmas dinner?" I looked at him. "You threw water in my face because I asked about the light bill. Tonight, I brought light." He shoved his chair back, the legs scraping tile. "You've lost it." Bree's voice wavered. "Evan, what's this 2,800 charge?" "The couch," he said, waving his hand. "With Dad's money." She asked softly. "It was for the house." "For your house," I said. "I've got the authority letter right there. I'm owner on that account. You're authorized user." Big difference. His sister on FaceTime leaned closer to her screen. "Evan, is this true?" "Stay out of this," he snapped. I turned to Bree. "I mailed him a repayment agreement. 60 days to return what he borrowed. $5,150 total. Certified mail." He didn't answer. "I'm giving him another chance in front of everyone." I pushed the top sheet toward him. My signature, space for his. Same terms. "Repay or I remove access." No yelling, no fighting, just paper. He stared at the page, breathing hard. "You humiliated me." "No," I said. "You did that yourself." The silence stretched. Bree's hand trembled as she turned over the last document, the ring cam transcript. "He'll hand it over. He always does." She looked at him, eyes wide with something halfway between shame and disbelief. Evan grabbed the stack, crumpled it, and threw it toward the trash. "You can't just pull the plug like that!" "I already did," I said. "A week ago." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I stood, buttoned my coat. "If you decide to do the right thing, you know where to find me. But I won't be part of a family where respect only runs one direction." Bree whispered, "Please, don't go like this." I paused at the doorway. "Bree, you didn't pour the water, but you didn't stop it either." Then I turned to Evan. "Enjoy your TV. It'll cost more than you think." I stepped outside into the falling snow. Behind me, I heard the oven timer ding again, mocking and precise. As I walked back up the stairs to my unit, I thought of Marion's words from years ago. If someone shows you their value of you, don't argue, just adjust your price. And that night, for the first time in months, I slept without checking the balance. The next morning, Christmas Day, Cleveland was silent under 6 inches of new snow. The air outside my window was so still that even the smoke from chimneys rose straight up like quiet flags. I made coffee, black and strong, and sat at the kitchen table with my folder open in front of me. On top was a single sticky note I'd written the night before. "If he refuses, protect what's yours." By 9 a.m., I'd already done it. The email to Mr. Polk was short and simple. No threats, no explanations. Proceed with owner's protective transfer. We'd agreed on that exact phrase the week prior. It was the trigger that would shift the remaining $14,312 from the joint account ending in 4862 into my new solo account. Clean, lawful, final. I hit send. By noon, Polk replied, "Transfer complete. Account access for authorized user suspended." Confirming closure, I exhaled for the first time in weeks. There's a sound your heart makes when you know you've finally drawn a boundary. It's not a beat, it's a click. That afternoon, while the city thawed slightly, I heard footsteps downstairs. The sharp rhythm of boots pacing. Then Bree's voice muffled. "Evan, please." "Don't." The knock came next. "Hard, open up!" he shouted from the bottom of my stairs. "You think you can humiliate me like that? In front of my wife? In front of my sister?" I stood by the door, coffee mug still in my hand. "It's done, Evan. You can't fix respect with volume." He pounded the door again. "You stole from me!" I opened it just enough for him to see the new brass deadbolt glinting in the light. "No, son. I took back what was already mine. The law calls it ownership. You might want to look it up." His eyes darted past me, trying to spot weakness. "You think this makes you the good guy? You're just an old man with a folder. That folder's stronger than your temper," I said quietly. He stared at me like he wanted to break something, then spotted the lease addendum I'd taped to the wall beside the door. Big, bold letters at the top. Notice of revocation of permission to enter premises. I'd stapled it to the new rental agreement I'd drawn up with my attorney. Filed. Signed and dated December 10th. "What's this?" He barked. "It means if you step foot up here again without my consent, it's trespassing. That's the law, too." For a second I thought he might tear it down. But Bree's footsteps came up behind him, slow and nervous. She touched his shoulder and whispered something I couldn't catch. He hesitated, then turned and stomped back down the stairs. I closed the door gently, not slammed, not locked in panic, just closed. A minute later my phone buzzed. "Bree again. I'm sorry for last night. He's just angry. Please come down later." "We can talk," I didn't reply. Some conversations aren't for repeating. Instead, I brewed another pot of coffee and opened my notebook. The blue spiral lay open on the same line I'd written days before. Silence is a choice. I added a new entry beneath it. Deck 25, owner's transfer executed. Notice of revocation posted. Bree attempted reconciliation. No contact accepted. When you write things down, they stop floating. They settle into reality. 2 days later, December 27th, 10 a.m. sharp, I kept my own word and went to the bank. The branch was quiet, post-holiday lull, only the hum of printers and the faint smell of a sanitizer. Mr. Polk saw me and smiled faintly. "All done?" he asked. "Almost," I said. "If he comes in, I'd like him to see the numbers before he argues." He nodded. "We'll handle it professionally." And just like that, Evan walked in, shoulders squared, winter coat unzipped like he wanted the whole world to know he wasn't cold. But his eyes gave him away, red-rimmed, tired. Bree followed 2 steps behind, not saying a word. "Dad," he started, already defensive. "This isn't right." Mr. Polk motioned toward his glass office. "Let's talk inside." We sat 3 men and 1 thick folder between us. Polk spread the documents on the desk like a referee laying out the rules before a match. The account closure and transfer were performed under standard banking procedure, he said evenly. "The owner authorized it. Records show Mr. Ash here holds sole ownership rights. There's no error." Evan's jaw tightened. "So that's it? He drains the account and walks away?" Polk folded his hands. "Technically, the account is now inactive. There's nothing left to walk away with." I stayed silent, watching him realize the game was over. After a moment, I slid a settlement sheet toward him, the one Tasha had drawn up. "This isn't punishment," I said. "It's closure. You sign this, we're clean. I waive repayment. You stop claiming what isn't yours." He stared at it, chest heaving. Then he pushed it back. "No." Polk nodded once, like a teacher marking a failed test. "Then this meeting is over." Evan stood so fast, his chair screeched against the floor. "You always wanted to control me," he shouted. I met his glare with calm. "No, son. I wanted to believe you'd act like a man without needing control." Bree's eyes filled with tears. "Evan, stop, please." He turned and stormed out. Bree lingered a second longer, eyes locked on me. "He's lost," she whispered. I nodded. "We both know who threw the first stone." After they left, Polk reached across the desk. "You did everything right. Most folks your age just yell or threaten. You did it by the book." I smiled faintly. "Paper always wins." By the time I stepped out into the grey daylight, snow had started again, thin flakes, lazy but certain. I walked home slowly, hands deep in my coat pockets, feeling lighter than I had in months. That night, Bree texted one last time, "I'm sorry for the water." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Keep the receipts." It wasn't anger. It was advice. I set my phone down, opened my folder one last time, and slid everything into neat order. Bank letters, receipts, transcripts, all dated and labelled. Then I closed it, pressed my hand on the cover and whispered, "Marion, I kept us safe." Outside, the wind howled again, but this time it sounded like applause. December 27th. The streets of Cleveland were crusted with grey snow, the kind that never really melts, just shifts sides of the curb. I walked into Great Lakes Credit Union at 10 a.m. sharp, same hour I'd told him at the dinner table. I half expected him not to show, but right on the dot, the glass doors swung open and there he was, Evan, coat open, breath visible, face set like concrete. Bree trailed behind him, quieter than before. She didn't meet my eyes. Mr. Polk waved us toward his small glass office. The blinds were half closed, letting in a sliver of winter light that cut across the papers on his desk. He had everything ready: the settlement sheet, the transfer confirmation, and the final account closure form. Evan didn't sit right away. "I'm not signing anything," he said. "That's fine," I replied. "You don't have to. I just wanted you to see the truth on paper, the same way you showed me disrespect in public," he scoffed. "You're dramatic. You act like this is some courtroom." I nodded slowly. "No, Evan, this is better. A courtroom costs time and pride. A bank stamp costs only ink." Polk looked between us, choosing neutrality. "Gentlemen, let's keep this simple. Mr. Ash is the owner. Mr. Evan Ash was the authorized user. That authorization was legally revoked on December 8th, confirmed by our records." Evan folded his arms. He emptied it behind my back. "No," I said evenly. "I acted after I gave you notice, certified mail, with a repayment agreement drafted by my attorney. You ignored it. Ignoring a letter doesn't erase its legality." Polk slid one document toward him. "This is the official transfer record dated December 24th. The balance was 14,312 at the time of movement. It's now in Mr. Ash's sole account." Evan's fingers twitched. 14,000. He repeated it like the number was bleeding out of him. "That's what respect was worth, apparently," I said. He looked at me, voice dropping. "You're ruining this family." "Families aren't built on theft," I said softly. "They're built on trust, and you broke that the day you treated my pension like your paycheck." The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. Bree kept her hands folded in her lap, staring at the floor. Polk cleared his throat. "We can finalize the closure paperwork and make sure there's no future confusion. I want nothing in his name tied to mine," I said. "No cards, no accounts, no signatures. Total separation." "Understood." Polk clicked his pen and began to sign and stamp. The rhythm was steady. Click, sign, stamp. The sound of order returning. When he was done, he handed me a certified copy of the closure record. "This is final," he said. Evan leaned forward, bitter smile twisting his mouth. "You think you won, old man? You can't freeze me out forever. I'll find another way." I slipped the paper into my folder. "Maybe, but not through me." He opened his mouth again, then stopped when he saw Polk's expression. Not pity, just patience worn thin. The banker said, "Mr. Ash, any attempt to withdraw or use funds from accounts containing your father's deposits would fall under elder financial exploitation. That's not just policy, it's federal law. We're required to investigate and report such activity." Evan blinked, stunned. "Elder? What?" I smiled faintly. "Elder financial exploitation. It means exactly what it sounds like. I filed a written notice already, just in case." He stared at me, realization spreading across his face like thawing ice. For the first time I saw fear, not of me, but of consequences. "You'd report your own son?" he asked quietly. "I'd protect my wife's memory," I said. "The one you used to call Mom." Bree covered her mouth with her hand. Tears slipped through her fingers. Evans stood, angry and cornered, then muttered, "This is insane," and stormed out through the main lobby, the bell above the door jangling too loud for such a small sound. When the door shut, Polk exhaled. "That could have gone worse," I nodded. "It went exactly as it needed to." He handed me an envelope with my new balance confirmation. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Ash," I smiled at that. First honest one I've had in a while. Walking back through the brittle sunlight, I passed a bakery window full of red ribbon boxes, identical to the one I'd carried to dinner. Funny how people always assume what's inside will be sweet. Back home, I sat at the table and wrote one last note in my blue ledger, Deck 27, settlement refused. Funds secured. Legal closure achieved. Emotional closure pending. That night, a text lit my phone. It was Bree. "I'm sorry for the water," I typed slowly, choosing words the way you choose the last nails for a coffin. "Keep the receipts, Bree. They tell the story when voices fail." I set the phone down, turned off the light, and listened to the hum of the radiator. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt owned. Justice doesn't always come with handcuffs or headlines. Sometimes it comes in a quiet office with blinds half shut, a banker's stamp, and a son realizing too late that respect, once lost, accrues no interest. By December 29th, the snow had turned soft and grey, the kind that sticks to boots and refuses to melt. I sat by my window, a mug of coffee steaming beside me, and stared at the lake. It looked like steel, flat, cold, and unbending. The chaos had finally gone quiet. On the table sat my folder, thinner now that the copies were with the bank and my attorney. I flipped through the last few pages, each one a chapter of a man learning to protect himself. I'd expected victory to feel like thunder. It didn't. It felt like a sigh. That morning I opened the top drawer of my desk and found my passport tucked beside Marion's rosary. The beads were smooth from her hands, the cross dulled with time. She'd always wanted to see Europe. "Portugal," she used to say, tracing the map on our old globe. "The tiles, the light, the sea air, its peace in color." I turned the passport over in my palm and thought, maybe it's my turn, so I did it. I opened my laptop, went to the airline site, and booked a one-way ticket to Lisbon for January 3rd. No round trip, no safety net, just clean air and distance. The winter fares were cheap, but that wasn't the reason. Some endings don't need applause, they just need exit stamps. I sold my old drill press on Facebook Marketplace that same afternoon for $220. The buyer was a kid from Parma, maybe 20, with sawdust still in his hair. When he asked if it worked, I said, "Better than most people." He laughed, and I realized it was the first time I'd smiled in weeks. That night, I laid out what I'd take with me: the folder, Marion's photo, 2 shirts, my passport, and the blue notebook with every date and dollar I'd written. Justice deserves record-keeping. Before bed, I wrote a short letter to Bree. It wasn't cruel, just honest. When someone stops handing you buckets, you notice the roof leaks. You'll both be fine once you stop pretending the rain isn't real. I sealed it, left it on the downstairs step, and placed a small Christmas cactus beside it. Marion had grown it from a clipping years ago. It still bloomed pink and stubborn, even when the world turned grey. On December 30th, I took one last walk to the lake. The wind bit through my coat, but the sky was clear, so clear it felt like forgiveness. I whispered a quiet thank you to the water, not for what it took, but for what it revealed. Back home, I packed my single suitcase. I didn't bother labeling it. No one was left to claim it if lost. Then I checked my flight confirmation one last time. Hopkins International to Lisbon. 8:25 a.m., January 3rd. I closed my laptop, looked around the apartment that had witnessed every step of my quiet war, and said aloud to the empty room, "You're safe now," when I turned off the lights. The red glow of the oven clock read 11:11, a wish hour. As Marion used to call it, I didn't make a wish. I'd already kept one. The money was secure. The locks were changed. The story was written. And somewhere across an ocean a new page was waiting. The last line I added to my ledger that night was simple: Deck 29, freedom booked, justice complete, Then I closed it, placed it on the table, and finally slept without dreaming of water. January 2nd. The suitcase waited by the door, like a quiet dog that knew it was leaving with me. My phone buzzed just before dawn. A text from Evan. "We can split the bills. Come downstairs." I stared at the message for a long time. The irony almost made me laugh. Split the bills after months of being his walking ATM. The tone wasn't an apology. It was negotiation, the kind that comes when the well runs dry. I typed back a single line, attached a photo of my boarding pass, and hit send. Owner means owner. No punctuation. None needed. I poured myself one last cup of coffee in that upstairs kitchen. The old kettle rattled as it boiled, same one Marion used every morning before work. The sound didn't ache this time. It just felt like continuity. By 8 a.m., I was at Hopkins International Airport. The sliding doors opened to the smell of disinfectant and burnt espresso. Travelers hurried past. Families, couples, businessmen with shoes that didn't squeak. Nobody looked at me, and I liked that. At TSA, I slipped off my shoes and coat, laid the blue notebook in the tray beside my wallet. The officer glanced at my boarding pass and said, "Lisbon. Nice escape. Retirement," I said. "The kind you earn twice." When I reached the terminal, I bought a 450 Americano from a young barista who called everyone Love. The warmth hit my hands just right. It took 2 months, but that water on my face from November had finally dried. I sat by the window overlooking the runway. A family nearby was arguing about snacks. A kid pressed her palms to the glass, watching planes taxi and lift. There was something healing about the way engines roared without apology, forward, not back. At 8:25, my flight boarded. No ceremony, no goodbye party, no fanfare. I carried one bag, one folder, and one clean conscience. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I took out my notebook and flipped through every page. From the first entry, Nav 22, dinner incident, 408 light bill, to the last, Deck 29, freedom booked. I underlined that final line and wrote one more. Peace weighs less than pride. When I landed in Lisbon 12 hours later, the air smelled like salt and bread. I took a taxi to a small guest house near Alfama, the old district Marion had circled on our map years ago. The room had a blue door, peeling at the corners, and a window that looked out over terracotta rooftops. That night, I sent a single postcard back home. The front showed a harbor at dusk, golden light spilling over the water, safe, warm, and paid up. No address, no signature. Just that, a week later, I wired $200 to Marlon, my neighbor, with the note, "For shoveling the walk," even though it's not mine anymore. Then I closed my laptop, leaned out the window, and listened to the church bells echo through the narrow streets. The sound wasn't lonely. It was proof I was somewhere new, somewhere earned. Revenge doesn't always end with shouting. Sometimes it ends quietly, with a man sitting by a foreign sea holding a mug of coffee, knowing that the storm behind him finally ran out of thunder. And as the evening light faded, I smiled and whispered to myself, the account's not the only thing I closed. January 15th, 2 weeks in Lisbon, and I'd finally stopped checking my phone every morning. The sea did that to me. It slows the clock, softens the noise. I spent my days walking cobblestone alleys, learning the rhythm of church bells, sipping coffee that tasted like patience. That morning, a single email slipped through the quiet. Bree, he sold the TV, the big one. Said it felt heavier coming off the wall than going up. He asked me not to tell you, but I thought you'd want to know. I laughed. Not mean, not triumphant. Just a short, tired laugh, the kind that comes from understanding too late what something truly cost. The 75-inch symbol of his pride had finally been lifted down, sold for rent money. Some debts pay themselves, just not in dollars. I typed back only 3 words, "Ish already knew." Then I opened my blue ledger, the one that had been my witness since November. Every page was filled with neat rows of proof, amounts, dates, letters, even emotions disguised as numbers. I turned to the last blank page and wrote, Jan 15, the bill he finally paid. Below that, I added, dignity returned with interest. I closed the cover slowly. like tucking in a sleeping child. There's a peace that comes when you no longer need to be right, only free. I'd thought revenge would feel like fire. It didn't. It felt like balance, a ledger finally aligned, a wrong finally documented in full. That evening, I recorded a voice note for the channel, same as always. Calm, steady. First person. You didn't lose me, I said into the mic. You gave me away. I paused, then added one more line, not for drama, but for anyone listening from their own cold kitchen. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks and receipts. Outside, the sun dipped over the Tagus River, throwing gold onto the tiled roofs. Somewhere below, a street musician played an old fader tune, sad, soft, forgiving. I thought about Evan, not the shouting man at the table, not the boy with fists full of anger, but the child who once rode on my shoulders at the county fair. Maybe one day he'd open a drawer, find one of my printed statements, and finally see what I was teaching him all along. Respect isn't inherited. It's earned, line by line. I poured myself a glass of port, sat by the open window and watched the lights come on one by one across the hills. Somewhere a bell tower struck 9, clear and unhurried. I whispered to the night, "We're even now." Then I picked up Marion's photo, the one that had survived every storm, and propped it on the ledge beside the glass. The candlelight flickered across her smile. "You'd have liked it here," I told her. "No noise, no begging, no bills. Just peace." The waves below the cliffs were slow, deliberate, like the pages of my story turning themselves. Justice had already been served. But forgiveness, that was the aftertaste, and as the last light faded from the Lisbon sky, I closed my notebook for good, knowing I'd written more than revenge. I'd written release.